Hello, hello, hello. How's everyone doing? Another week, another episode. This is Stats Over Politics. As always, I'm your host, Sean Holko, alongside my guy, Mr. Kevin Dent. Mr. Javon Toddy will be unable to join us tonight as he is handling Podfather duties, but the show must go on. As Kevin likes to say, we got to bring you guys that content, and we are bringing you some content right now on a Tuesday night, June 23rd, 2026, that is piping hot. It's scalding. The first night of the NBA draft is still going on right now as we speak, but we got through the meat of it. We know what you guys want to hear us talk about. So here we are to give you that piping hot content. Kevin Dent, how are we doing today?
You know, man, it's another draft where I walk away just saying, damn, Sacramento, damn. Sean and I were talking about it before the show. I'm sure we'll get into it. We both differ on thoughts. I've been seeing a lot of things on Instagram, a lot of things on Twitter. Everyone's screaming from the rooftops. But I'm going to give you what I honestly feel. So I'm excited to kind of talk about it. I've been screaming Darren Peterson #1, and unfortunately I was wrong on that. So as Toddy said, the group chat needs a new photo. It was Darren Peterson in a Kings jersey. So, you know, just great day. Can't complain. Like Sean said, the draft is still going on. Toddy's team just picked up Chris Sinak Jr., the center. That was a huge pick for them. So we got 3 picks left. So got a lot of good talent on it, and it's going to be a loaded second round if a lot of these guys fall.
Yeah, if anything, the group chat picture should have changed about a month ago once the NBA draft lottery was set. I believe that was on Mother's Day that the NBA draft lottery happened. And so we kind of let Kev and his delusion ride high for a little bit. The delusion even carried into today when Kevin said, if DP dropped out the top 3, we got to make a move. We got to go get him. And it's like, in what world is he going to fall out of the top 2, let alone the Kings skyrocket into the top 3 to go and get Darren Peterson? But we'll get to that in a little bit. And we will also get to, as you see me wearing my Sacramento Kings merch, I'm actually wearing Domantas Sabonis number 10 Sacramento Kings jersey today that quickly became ancient because I bought it, I think, in the 23-24 season. And then that summer is when the Kings signed DeMar DeRozan, and DeMar DeRozan became number 10, and then Sabonis became number 11. And so not because of that, but I actually haven't worn this jersey that often. And so I thought, like, you know what? Fuck it. Might as well. Who knows if you want to – yeah, right. And, like, who knows if Domantas Sabonis is even a Sacramento King by the time that the season starts. And I definitely prefer to wear Kings jerseys that are of current players more often than players of the past, unless it's maybe like a De'Aaron Fox or DeMarcus Cousins. Nevertheless, I'm rocking my Sacramento Kings gear today because, as Stats Over Politics 34 says on YouTube, A-cuff season. And we're going to be getting to that in a little bit. But the only thing that would supersede us talking about the NBA draft first round the night that it happens is what happened last night. And rumors were circulating for so long and basically for the last calendar year that Giannis Antetokounmpo said, I no longer want to be a Milwaukee Buck, and it's time for me to move on. It's time for all of us to move on. And it took about a year for it to finally come to fruition. We ended up having a final 2 teams between the Miami Heat and Toddy's Boston Celtics, which, oh boy, that would have gotten really interesting if Giannis ended up becoming a Celtic. And we're going to get to all the details of that in a moment. But officially, the trade that went down last night at about 8:50 Pacific time was a blockbuster, as Shams put it. The Milwaukee Bucks are trading franchise icon Giannis Antetokounmpo and Bobby Portis to the Miami Heat for Tyler Hero, who is a Wisconsin native, so that's cool. Khalil Ware, Jaime Jaquez Jr., Kasparis Jakuchionis. I should have tried to practice saying his name before I got on live. 3 first-round picks, including number 13, which we just saw, 1 pick swap, and 1 second-round pick. And as Shams continued to note, the Heat are sending Milwaukee unprotected first-rounders in 2031 and 33, along with 13 that we just saw tonight. Pick swap in 2030 and a 2033 second-round pick. The trade does not include any additional teams. It's 1-to-1, but the Heat and the Bucks both have time up until July 6th to rework the framework of the deal if more opportunities come about. Then Shams noted how Pat Riley, the Heat president, he finally got his big fish to land in Miami for the first time since they got Jimmy Butler 7 years ago. And then before that, LeBron James, Chris Bosh. And he just mentioned some of the great names that Pat Riley has ended up getting to come to Miami. Ultimately, Giannis is that next guy. And finally, Shams noted, and this is for the Podfather perspective here, that the Celtics aggressively pursued Giannis, offering Milwaukee a package featuring 2024 Finals MVP Jaylen Brown and 2 first-round picks. The Bucks seriously negotiated with Miami and Boston in recent weeks, and both were on Giannis's list of preferred destinations. And one other nugget that I'll throw in before I hear Kevin's reaction to this news is that apparently Giannis was interested in signing a long-term contract extension with the Minnesota Timberwolves if Anthony Edwards were there. And so shout out to loyal listener of the pod, Wesley, because I'm sure that little nugget hurt his heart. But nevertheless, Giannis is a member of the Miami Heat. Kevin, your reaction was what?
Shocking. It definitely lets you know the mindset of the Milwaukee Bucks. A lot of people on Twitter, now X, were saying, how do you pass up on Jaylen Brown and 2 first-round picks? As the new tanking rules are, it's better to almost be semi-competitive than to just go out there and suck. Going out there and suck will not get you rewarded with the picks like it has in the past. So the NBA is urging people to get more competitive. And for them to get essentially 3 starters in Jaime Jaquez, Khalil Ware, and Tyler Hero. And then they got the point guard that Sean butchered his name, so I'm not even going to try. He's a point guard from Illinois. So he was hurt a lot his rookie, so he didn't really get to play. And then today that was yesterday. So going into today, we understood that they got that. They got 2 first-round picks. They got a 3 first-round pick swaps when Giannis is 35, 36, and 38. Is Giannis going to play till he's 38? I don't know. But they got a lot of picks once the Giannis era is, if not over, on the decline. So the Bucks got a huge haul. And for them to aid Nate Ament, he averaged 17 points, 6 rebounds, and 2 assists, and Brandon Burries for them to average 16 points, 5 rebounds, and 3 assists. Brandon Burries is the best shooting guard in the draft. So to add more youth, more depth to this team, alongside guys like Ryan Hollins and Miles Turner and Kevin Porter Jr., this is what the NBA is going to now look like. It's going to look like we want to compete. We might not win championships, but we're going to put a team in there that's going to win, and that's going to do our best to win. But this overall lineup for the Heat it's hard to judge because I understand that it's June 23rd. So the team's going to look completely different. They can go out there and sign a lot of middle guys, middle exception guys, veteran minimum guys. But they do have guys like Norman Powell coming off of his first All-Star season. Is he going to chase the bag? This might be the only time he gets to claim that he has a All-Star bid. So it's going to be very interesting to kind of see how that plays out. Andrew Wiggins has a player option. So if those guys do not come back into the mix, it's going to be very interesting to kind of see how it all plays out. And to have your 2 best players really not be 3-point threats in today's basketball is not great. But if anyone's going to figure it out, Eric Spoelstra and Pat Riley. So Giannis got what he wanted. I'm expecting an extension coming in the next couple of days. So Bam shot 32% from 3. Bobby Portis is a not very good 3-point shooter, but he's a solid 3-point shooter. So they're going to have to bring in a lot of guys. They got our old guy, Davion Mitchell. So we're going to see what he can do. And then I'm looking forward to seeing what the Heat do add-on wise.
I've been happy to see the resurrection of Davion Mitchell's career in Miami because we saw him end up going to Toronto after being traded from Sacramento. And he had some little glimpses in Toronto of what he could end up becoming. And what we've really seen from him in Miami is emerging as a true point guard and as a floor general. And the thing about Davion Mitchell is everyone always talked about how he was off night with his defense and he could really lock up your opposing team's best player. But then when it came to his offensive game, it was always pretty inconsistent. Kings fans were always really relying on him to be that 3-point sniper. He might still have to be a 3-point shooter on this Miami team because I saw some people saying on Twitter, who's stopping this pairing of Bam Adebayo and Giannis Antetokounmpo? And then someone quote tweeted and said the 3-point line. And so Davion Mitchell may still be heavily relied upon, especially given what happens with the future of a Norman Powell, as you mentioned, first-time All-Star, as well as an Andrew Wiggins, former number 1 overall pick. While I understand your point that Norman Powell is coming off of an all-time season, the best season of his career, if I were in his shoes, I would take a pay cut to stay in Miami, to stay in that organization that just turns out winners. And that's just kind of the Heat culture. But the opportunity to play alongside Giannis versus you go to, I don't know, insert team A. You could go to the Sacramento Kings. He could get the bag from the Sacramento Kings. What's it going to result in? Not much. Not much when it comes to team success. Yeah, he could probably have another all-star bid if he's putting up 30 points a game. But at this point in his career, he's probably weighing, okay, do I want to have more individual success or do I want to try and make something of this NBA career and have team success that he's going to be remembered for generations for? Because we always bring up James Harden. One of your friends who always likes to comment about James Harden talks about like, oh, you would much rather have the career. Go ahead.
The Kings just traded for the 29th pick. So we have another first-round pick. We are on the board.
Just okay. Well, thank you for that.
So in about 45 seconds, I'm going to cut you off again, but I just wanted to let you know the Kings are back in the first round. So it's about to get interesting. So I started interrupting. Let's get back to Giannis.
And no, you're good. And that is important news, and that is the piping hot content that we were alluding to in the opening, is that the NBA draft is still going on right now. Anything can happen. We thought the Kings were done for the night. Apparently not. Kevin was salty at the beginning because he wanted the Kings to trade out of the 7th pick, get 10 and 13 or some other type of package. Well, Kevin, Scott Perry, he might have been listening. He said, I'm not done yet. Just wait. Hold the criticism. Not done yet. So we shall see. And I'm glad that I kept the TV on in front of me as well, just so that I can glance up and see who they end up picking. But back to Miami and Giannis. I mean, I believe this is our guy Vaughn at Stats for Politics 34. I got to ask him for sure, just to absolutely confirm. But okay, so Vonnie V. Lone, the Podfather, the third member of our trio, says Celtics weren't giving away their entire team. Congratulations, Giannis. You are a fourth seed in the East. And then Vaughn also mentions how the Kings traded back into the first round. So we shall see what the Kings end up doing in the next 5 minutes or so. But, and you know,
the pick is in.
Kevin, it worked out perfect. Oh, the pick is in. And so it ended up working out perfect that we talked about Giannis first. And for the number, so the according to Shams, the official trade is the Cleveland is trading number 29 to Sacramento for number 34 and a future second rounder. So the Kings move up 5 picks. There's clearly a guy on the board right now who they didn't think was going to make it to 34. So then the Kings include a future second round pick to be able to move up 5 spots. We will see in moments who the Sacramento Kings end up picking with their second first round pick of the night. So that's pretty exciting. Then when it comes to Giannis and Miami, you look at multiple time MVPs that have been traded in NBA history. Giannis is the 6th. You go all the way back to 1986, Wilt Chamberlain. And then 1975, you had Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. 86, Moses Malone. 2010, LeBron James, technically a sign-and trade. And then 2012, Steve Nash, as Adam Silver is stepping up right now to read off the Sacramento Kings pick. I wish that I was a better lip reader, but I'm waiting for the graphic to change on the screen as I stall in real time here on episode number 193 of Stats Over Politics. Shaun Holko alongside Kevin Dent, as we are waiting to see who the Kings pick with the 29th pick in the 2026 NBA draft. Kevin doesn't seem happy. Oh, Alex Caravan. All right. I'll take that.
He's a winner. We got to stop drafting these old dudes. He's a 24-year-old
Why are you upset, Kevin? He's a winner. He's a winner.
He's a 24-year-old rookie.
Well, he's a winner is what he is, and he adds 3-point shooting to this roster.
I thought we were going to end on a good night, on a good note.
So the Kings just picked up 2-time NCAA champion Alex Caravan, and I am honestly happy about it because we need winners here in Sacramento. And so, again, just as Kevin and I were talking about in the pre-show chat, ultimately the NBA draft is a crapshoot. There are guys who you think are going to be an absolute lock, and some of them end up turning into an absolute lock of being a generational player. And then there are some guys like Andrew Wiggins who look like they are going to be just a transcendent player, and then they just become a role player in the NBA. So it's a crapshoot. We'll see what happens. But the Kings end up finishing off night 1 of the NBA draft with 2 players, Darius Acuff Jr. from Arkansas, and then Alex Caravan from UConn. And so that is the Kings move for the night, and we will get to the Kings and the rest of the NBA draft in our next segment. But just finishing up here with Giannis, I just mentioned how he is the 6th guy to win multiple MVPs and be traded. And if you just look at his resume, I mean, it's a long list. When Giannis, NBA champion, finals MVP, 2-time regular season MVP, defensive player of the year, most improved player, 10-time All-Star, 9-time All-NBA, 5-time All-Defense. He was on the NBA top 75 team, and he is the Bucks franchise leader in points, rebounds, assists, and blocks. Arguably the best player in Milwaukee Bucks history. I think that is hard to contest. And so, Kevin, Toddy was just saying, congratulations, Giannis. You're a 4th seed in the East. I feel like Miami, if they bring back Norman Powell and Andrew Wiggins, and that's a big if, asterisk, because a lot of people are joking about, like, okay, the fact that Miami gutted their team to be able to get Giannis. And we've seen in years past, whether if it be Kevin Durant going to Houston last year, and how they may have gutted the core of their team, but that's what free agency is for. And then you have guys who are willing to take lower contracts to go play with a player like a Kevin Durant, now like a Giannis Antetokounmpo. So we shall see what Miami looks like in a couple of weeks after free agency takes place. But your real-time reaction here on June 23rd, less than 24 hours after Giannis was just traded to Miami, what do you think is the ceiling and the floor of this Miami team with Giannis and Bam?
So the past... Jimmy left in the bubble, and then they went, and so they went to 2 finals with Jimmy, and they were able to become relevant again. Basketball is good when the Miami Heat are relevant, and that's what Giannis makes them. He makes them relevant. I don't think he makes them a contender, but obviously that's me saying that today. They could make a lot of moves. They can make some pieces. They can make something work. But just saying today, I just think they're relevant. The East isn't the best in competition. They're not better than the Cavs. They're not better than the Pistons. They're not better than the Celtics. It's not crazy to say that the Wizards might be better than them. It's not crazy to say that the Hornets might be better than them. It's not crazy to say that. I mean,
I'll go with you on the Wizards,
today,
but I don't know about the
Hornets.
Hornets.
Today they're not better than the Hornets. Today.
Okay, but yeah, but we know that there's the little asterisk that like there are going to be other players.
Is a Chris Middleton and a Norman Powell re-signing and an Andrew Wiggins re-signing going to excite you?
I mean, like whatever they bring it'll excite me. It'll excite me to rank them ahead of the Charlotte Hornets as much as they had an emergent season this past year.
But they're not better than the Pistons either. Like I just named 4 or 5 teams.
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair.
So I mean, are they better than the Raptors?
Yes.
I mean, I can say that. It's hard for me to say that because what we've seen out of Giannis recently is a lot of soft tissue injuries. Is he going to be there when the playoffs matter? You know, we saw his one run. Fair. He got his 55-point nugget in the finals. But even when they had that finals run, Giannis wasn't the closer. When it got tough, they gave it to Chris Middleton. This team no longer has a closer. You're not going to give it to Bam Adebayo. I get it. He scored 83 points. He's generational now. I get it. We have to understand that Bam isn't a number 2 option on a championship team. So that means they then need to go get a number 2 option. So we saw a defensive team in the San Antonio Spurs not be able to get done because when it got going and they needed a bucket, they couldn't give it anybody. We've seen people storm the paint for Giannis and build a wall, literally, in words of Chris Paul. So it's going to be very interesting to see how this plays out. But like I said, Bostra and they're going to figure it out. Pat Riley, they're going to figure it out. They're going to bring in the guys. And it's going to take a lot from those rotational guys. Every night, people are going to come to play against them. They got Giannis Antetokounmpo. Maybe they get into a Ja Morant sweepstakes. Like they have to get into the big fish because Bam Adebayo cannot be the second best player on the championship team.
I just love this move for Giannis himself because Giannis is the guy who obviously came from nothing, basically in Greece, and he turned himself into what he is today, which is an all-time great. And so I'm really happy for Giannis, and I just think that Giannis's mentality fits in perfect with that Miami Heat culture that Pat Riley has instilled for 35 years. Giannis is ready to work. Giannis is like, it's not like he's a Luka where he's coming in overweight and he needs to slim himself down. Like Giannis is already in great shape. So I think that it's a perfect fit organizationally for Giannis. And I could see him staying unless there is an opportunity to like team up with 2 other future Hall of Famers at another destination to try and go and win a championship and ring chase. I could see Giannis staying in Miami for the rest of his career. And also a place like Miami is where guys go to team up. I mean, we saw it with the Heatles, obviously 16 years ago, where they were talking about going to New York, Chicago, Cleveland, even going to Toronto, but ultimately they ended up going to Miami where D-Wade already was because they wanted to be a part of that Heat culture. And also, who wouldn't want to live in Miami? LeBron has recently talked about some of the challenges that he faced as a 25-year-old living in Miami and a married man living in Miami at 25 years old, and just how he was smart and just kept his head on straight, just kept looking forward, focused on basketball, won 2 championships, 2 MVPs while he was in Miami. And so I'm really happy about Giannis being on the Miami Heat. I'm even happier about him not being a Boston Celtic. Not to hate on Toddy and his team, but I just did not want to see Giannis go to Boston. Boston has already had enough success over the years. They didn't need to add a player like Giannis. But the other side of it that everyone seems to be talking about a lot more than the actual deal that took place is the fact that the Celtics, they didn't necessarily dangle Jaylen Brown in trade negotiations. They didn't necessarily dangle him, Kevin, but they were listening. And they were saying, like, okay, they were talking to Milwaukee. We want Giannis. What's it going to take to get Giannis? And they basically said, we want Jaylen Brown, a couple first-round picks, and we want some of your young players. And what is interesting is that the sticking point in this deal ended up not being having to trade Jaylen Brown or not. It was some of the young guys like a Sam Hauser or even a Peyton Pritchard, who the Boston Celtics didn't want to get rid of. And that's what held up this trade from being taken place with the Celtics and the Bucks rather than the Bucks and the Heat. So I found that to be really interesting. And as Javon also says, the real question is, where is the Thanasis going to be? And that is a hilarious question. I've already seen memes of Thanasis hanging off an airplane of like Giannis taking a PJ to get to Miami, and Thanasis is holding on to the wing, just hoping that if he lands in Miami, that Pat will give him a 10-day. And so that'll be interesting to see as well. Any other reactions to this move, Kevin, before we end up getting to the draft?
I just want to kind of talk about the Jaylen Brown thing. He's been in trade talks for a long time in his career. Before they won the finals, it was for Kevin Durant. Now it's for Giannis Antetokounmpo. For him to come out publicly and say this was his favorite year, led him to the 2 seed, number 2 or second team All NBA. He has a good contract for the next 3 years, so you get a lot of longevity when it comes to Jaylen Brown with 3 years. He's not even 30 yet, so I definitely expect him to be moved. I just don't know how you come back from this. And it goes to show that the management doesn't believe that they're good enough anymore. So for able them to move him, we all kind of knew it was Tatum's team, but it's kind of like one of those things that's understood that doesn't have to be spoken. So it's going to be very interesting to kind of see how this plays out. But the Celtics are definitely going to make some moves to get better. And it started today with Chris Sinnett. That was a huge draft pick. I know Nemi's a great guy, but just to have more depth, you can't really play Vooch. He's not a defender. So to get a long, athletic, rim-protecting center goes a long way. So they're making the right moves. Brad Stevens and Joe Mazzulla are going to figure it out, whether they're playing Peyton Pritchard or Jaylen Brown. They're going to find a way to win. It's a winning culture over there.
It certainly is. As we continue things here on episode number 193 of Stats Over Politics, Shaun Holko alongside Kevin Dent. Just want to remind everyone, please give us a like on YouTube. It helps us a lot. And if you enjoy the podcast, hit subscribe to get notifications when we go live. And you can follow us on Instagram and TikTok at Stats Over Politics and on X at Stats Over Politics. Make sure to subscribe, rate, and review on all podcast platforms. And if you're enjoying the show, give us those 5 stars. We'd really appreciate it. As you guys are currently turned into episode number 193 of Stats Over Politics, Shaun Holko and Kevin Dent. As now we continue, Kevin, I just have to get to these 2 comments real quickly because they made me laugh from Toddy, as he just says twice, JB Celtic life. JB Celtic for life is what he meant to say the first time around. And so we'll have to see, as I see Kevin's already typing away. So he is getting ready to troll Toddy right back in our YouTube comments. And make sure to check us out on YouTube at Stats Over Politics. Come join the conversation, whether if you are watching us here on YouTube and commenting live where I can highlight your comments on the screen, or if you're checking us out on Instagram at Stats Over Politics, and where I can copy and paste your comments in. And we appreciate the engagement, and it leads to us having more things to talk about. So we appreciate you all for tuning in as we continue things here on episode 193, Kevin. Now let's get to our NBA draft first round reactions, because Scott Van Pelt, he is officially on the TV screen ahead of me, which means that the first round of the NBA draft has officially concluded. The Kings cannot trade back in to the draft. So we know that the Kings walked away from night 1 of the draft with Darius Acuff and also Alex Caravan from UConn. And so that's what the Kings did. But before we get to our Sacramento angle, which we obviously see the gear that I'm wearing if you're tuned in on YouTube, Instagram, or Twitch. And we know Kevin is a diehard Sacramento Kings fan alongside myself. But before we get to the Kings angle of it all, let's just look at the draft itself, because this draft up until 9, and you could even say 9 wasn't as much of a surprise. I'd say most of the lottery was pretty chalky, just in terms of what we expected to happen. So AJ Debonsa goes number 1 overall to the Washington Wizards, much to Kevin's dismay, as his guy Darren Peterson goes number 2 to from Kansas to the Utah Jazz. And I just wanted to highlight something real quickly about Darren Peterson that I thought was pretty cool. Kevin, you already liked this from Front Office Sports, as Daryl Peterson, who is his brother, ended up signing with the LA Rams as an undrafted free agent. And so I thought that was pretty cool. It's been a good couple months for the Peterson family. And so congrats to Daryl Peterson and Darren Peterson for having their dreams come true. But as I was saying, much to Kevin's dismay, Peterson goes 2. Then you have Cameron Boozer going 3 to Memphis, Caleb Wilson going 4 to Chicago. Then things got a little interesting because Keaton Wagler, he ends up going to the Los Angeles Clippers via the Indiana Pacers from the Ivica Zubac trade. Then you have Kevin's guy, Michael Brown Jr. from Louisville going 6 to Brooklyn. And then the Kings get Darius Acuff Jr. at 7. It continues on. But the point is that the first round, especially the lottery, was pretty chalky, Kevin. And so what was your biggest standouts from the first round of the 2026 NBA draft?
I think the biggest standout for me was honestly Mikal Brown going 6, because it was very obvious that when you think guards, you knew that the Clippers were not going to go point guard. They just traded for Darius Garland, so they were going to bring a guy that could play alongside him. But when you think of the Nets, they just drafted Igor Dimin out of BYU, who's a 6'8" guard. So you thought they could have went a lot of different ways. And I understand it was the top 4 and then it was the guards. That's how it was going to run. No matter how the top 4 played out, the next 3 to 4 picks were going to be all guards. I was expecting them to maybe go get a Darius Acuff, a Brandon Burries, a Nate Amon, another guy that can play alongside Igor, because you just drafted a guy at number 8 overall as a point guard. So now they have a lot of guards in that locker room. So it really just goes to show that the Nets really don't have a way to go, a path. And then from the Mikal Brown standpoint, if you're going to take a guard, why not take the best guard? So I know there's been a lot of bad mouthing Darius Acuff out of my mouth. He's the best point guard in the draft. I understand that. But it was very interesting to see them pass up on Darius Acuff, because I definitely thought the only way we get Darius Acuff is we trade up. I didn't think that he would get past the Nets. So that was very surprising. Morris Johnson Jr. out of the school from up north. That was very surprising. But obviously, Shaun and I talked about before the show with Dustin May coming on to the staff. For him to have a fellow team from up north member, it's going to go a long way to build that culture. He's a guy that's come from the culture. So to be able to really embed to what Dustin May wants to do as a foundation. Another one that really surprised me was LeBaron Phillips falling all the way to 22. And even at 22, I don't think that was the best fit for him. We literally just saw this example with Jerry McCain. VJ Eshkman and Tyrese Maxey ran him out of town. So then you bring in another guard when you have all these other holes on your team. It's very interesting to me. But those are probably the 2 biggest what ifs or biggest surprises for me, I guess. And then Yaxel. I don't like Yaxel with Golden State. I don't see where he fits there. Because he can't play power forward because of Draymond, and I don't think he shoots the ball well enough to be a small forward in the NBA. So it's going to be very interesting to kind of see that dynamic. I expected them to probably go get another guard, especially with Moses Moody going down, Brandon Porzingis, or not Porzingis. I'm just calling Paz. I'll butcher his last name. Paz really hasn't been
Brandon Pajemski.
Brandon Pajemski. He hasn't really turned out to be anything for them. So for them to go get a LeBaron Phillips, a Dalen Swin, like any other kind of guard to play alongside Steph Curry. And at some point, you're going to have to start preparing for life after Steph. So bringing in that guard to fill in that role, no one's going to fill in the Steph Curry role. Obviously, he's the best player in Warriors history. He's one of the best players of all time. I get that. But at some point, you're going to have to prepare for life without him. And it's very interesting that Steve currently signed a 2-year extension. So it's definitely the writing's on the wall. So they're going to go big fish hunting and see what they can do. And grabbing a young guy like that would be able to use him as more trade bait. So that was a very interesting pick as well.
Yeah, the thing I wanted to follow up on, you talking about Yaxel Lendenberg from Michigan going 11 to Golden State, is that I thought that was going to be the guy going 9 to Dallas, since May is going to be the head coach of the Mavericks now, because I kind of figured you have 3 guys who are likely going to be lottery picks. You're picking at 9. He's got to pick one of his guys, right? And that's exactly what he did. But the thing that was most interesting about it is Morez Johnson Jr. was ranked, as far as if you pay attention to what all the rankings guys are saying, Morez Johnson Jr. was actually ranked the lowest among the 3 of them. It was actually, I think it was a Damara, then Yaxel Lendenberg, and then Morez Johnson Jr. And they ended up going in reverse order, all within a matter of 4 picks from each other. But still, I thought that was pretty interesting. And what I wanted to say about Yaxel is that I saw a clip surface just within the last couple hours of the Warriors draft room, and apparently, and this is us reading into it, so it's like you can watch the clip for yourself and have your own takeaways. But apparently, Warriors owner Joe Lacob and general manager Mike Dunleavy Jr., they didn't seem to really agree on that pick, and maybe it's because there was an offer on the table to trade 11 to another team. Joe Lacob might have wanted to take it, and then Mike Dunleavy was like, no, we're sticking at 11. We're going with Yoxel. He's going to help us in XYZ. Could have been the reverse situation, but we don't know what was going on in that war room. But anytime you don't see a draft room where you have 10 different people all standing and clapping at the same time, all in sync, then it always kind of just raises the red flags of like, what's really going on in that room? Like, what are they disagreeing on? I just find this to be so interesting. And that's kind of the reality TV minds that we all have from years and years of reality TV surfacing across our timelines or our televisions. I wanted to talk about AJ DeBonsa because I've been telling you, Kevin, this guy is number one forever. And I first saw AJ DeBonsa when I believe it was when he came through Prolific Prep out in Napa. And then he ended up moving on, played high school ball in Utah before he goes to BYU. I had first heard of AJ DeBonsa when he was coming through Prolific Prep. And I'm like, all right, who's this guy basically down the road from us in Sacramento? And I think his story is so cool just because like his dad moved their family from overseas. His dad, when they moved to America, he ended up being a cop, and his dad just tried to live like a very regimented and structured life. And he's always looked out for AJ. And something else that I thought was really cool is that like AJ stands for, I think his first name is like ASEAN, and he's junior. And so that's how he gets the AJ. And I thought it was really cool when they introduced him tonight at the draft that it was ASEAN DeBonsa Jr. instead of just AJ DeBonsa. I thought that was really cool.
I
And
had
you
no idea
look
what
at
that
his
was.
numbers.
I thought we were getting surprised. I was like, who the fuck is this?
Yeah,
And
so
they said
that's
DeBanson. I
that's
was
the
like,
government.
oh, okay. I thought it was some guy from I thought it
Yeah,
was like the Luca draft. Like they said Luca Doncic. I
right.
was like, who?
Right. So we look at AJ's numbers at BYU. He averaged 25.5 points per game, 6.8 rebounds, 1.1 steals, and he shot 51% from the field, which I think is pretty damn good. But then you also look at most points per game by a first overall pick this century. No surprise, Kevin, your guy LeBron James ranks at the top with 26.8. Then we had Anthony Edwards with 24.6. Anthony Davis with 24 even, and Zion had 23.8. So it's kind of, where is AJ going to fit in there? I don't think AJ is going to crack that top four because he's going to be playing alongside some established all-stars as he's playing alongside a Trae Young and an Anthony Davis. Oh, and let's not forget another former top three pick, Alex Sarr. And then you got Keyshawn George, Bilal Coulibaly, Trey Johnson, Bub Carrington, Cam Whitmore. The Wizards, they got to be a top six team in the East. I don't know if I'm picking them to win the championship next year, but they're certainly a playoff team and avoiding that play in. And then we look at Darren Peterson. Hey, man, I'm going to be watching a lot more Utah Jazz basketball. That's for sure, because we
Easy.
know my guy Lowry Markkanen is out there, but I'm interested to see how Lowry and Jaren Jackson Jr. fit alongside Walker Kessler. I mean, Lowry is a huge three to have. Like, you could slot Lowry in at the 5. The 4 is his natural position. If they're starting a lineup with Triple J, Walker Kessler, and Lowry has to be playing the 3. Then you got Darren Peterson at the 2. You probably put Keontae George in there at the 1. And that's even putting aside Ace Bailey. I don't know what this Utah Jazz team is going to look like by the time that the opening tip comes, because they just have so much depth when it comes to big men that I'm like, what's going to happen? My guy Lowry is going to probably get traded out of there. Is they're going to try to trade him for assets or whatever? We shall see. And then finally, I wanted to talk about Cam Boozer, because Cam Boozer, your Dookie, he actually was saying, I think this is really interesting, because I think in the future, people are going to look years back and they're going to be like, how did this guy not go number 1? How did he go number 3? And it makes me think about Luka Doncic, where like DeAndre Ayton was without a shadow of a doubt the number 1 overall pick. And then it was like, does Luka go 2? Does Luka go 3? He ends up going 3 because our Sacramento Kings and Vlade Divac, they did what they did, and Marvin Bagley goes too. But I find it really interesting because you look at a guy like Cam Boozer, 22.5 points per game, 10.2 rebounds per game in college. So he's already averaging a double-double, doing it with a 55.6 field goal percentage. And this is a big man shooting 39.1% from three-point territory and adding in, as Toddy would say, sprinkling in 4.1 assists per game. And so the Grizzlies, I don't know if Ja Morant is going to be around long-term, but they just traded Jaren Jackson Jr., and they immediately have his replacement with Cam Boozer. And now it'll be really interesting to see how Cam Boozer kind of helps Zach Edey flourish and takes some of that burden off of Zach Edey down low, and just how him being there is going to end up opening things up for Zach Edey and seeing how that duo can do in the post. I'm really interested to see that. So now, Kevin, we pivot to our Sacramento Kings because, as was already said earlier, Smooth says Kings with a solid draft pick. Toddy says Kings got their guy, as well as Toddy also saying Wizards making the offs. I think we could agree to that. And Utah could also make the offs, most likely play-in. Yeah, they're probably a play-in team. And so I'm interested to hear what you really think. I know we talked about this in the pre-show meeting, but the audience wants to hear from you, Kevin. The Kings got their guy. I mean, it seemed like everything worked out exactly how we wanted. I know you were really big on Michael Brown, and Uncle Manny also says, we got our man. We sure did, Uncle Manny. And I even saw a clip from James Ham, independent Kings journalist, who was at the draft party tonight at Golden One Center, and he recorded the crowd reaction of the number 6 pick when Brooklyn took Michael Brown, and the crowd erupted in excitement because that meant that Darius Acuff was going to be available at number 7. And so ultimately, Kevin, you're not happy with Darius Acuff becoming a Sacramento King, because we talk all about De'Aaron Fox, Tyrese Halliburton, even Davion Mitchell, the point guards who the Kings have drafted within the last 10 years, and how none of them are here anymore. They got their guy for the future now. So why are you upset?
I'm upset because people are going to look at me and say this is recency bias. They're going to say, oh, Kevin, look at Jalen Brunson. Jalen Brunson's a small guard and he won. Yeah. After Jalen Brunson, it goes Steph Curry, generational player. Then we go back multiple decades to Isaiah Thomas. There's not a lot of proof in the pudding that this works. We saw him, if you watch March Madness at all this year, you saw that he got torn up by the point guard from High Point. He was one of the worst defenders in college basketball. Basketball. In the West, it's Luka. It's SGA. It's Dylan Harper. It's Dylan Fox. It's Stephon Castle. Kyrie Irving. Damian Lillard at 34, 35 years old. There's not a single night in the West where you can take a night off as a point guard. Not a single night. Now, if you're going to go out there and give us 30 points, cool. That's what Jalen Brunson does. Jalen Brunson gives you 30 points. Steph gives you 30 points. If you're going to have so much offense to where your defense is minimized and we have no point or no choice but to keep it on the floor, I'll honestly come on here and say I was completely wrong. But putting his name in this category means he has to be an all-NBA point guard. That means he has to be a top 15 player in the NBA. I don't know if Darius Acuff is going to be a top 15 player in the NBA. Is he an elite point guard? Can he score the hell out of the ball? Yes. Is that going to translate to in the NBA? I don't know. But all I'm saying is just imagine if, not saying this could have been possible, but imagine if we could have got a Casey Wallace 14 and 17, a young player that we've seen be able to do something good in this NBA, and more draft picks. It's like the NFL. We talk about this every year when they draft a quarterback and they don't have the foundation for the quarterback to be successful. But who gets the blame? The quarterback. The player gets blamed because he was drafted into a situation that was not built to win and to be around him. If we had a team like the Knicks that had a lot of wing defenders, and we're like, you know what? Okay, he could be the worst defender on our team. But we already have a team without a rim protector. We already are playing a power forward at center. So we're small at center, and we're small at point guard. So now Keegan Murray is going to have to become an elite defender. DeMar DeRozan's probably not going to be on the team. Zach LaVine's not a good defender. So you're putting a bad defender in a room with other bad defenders. So what are we really expecting to come out of this? That's my biggest thing. Like I said, if he can just score the hell out of the ball and it minimizes his defense, fine. The guys that we look at like that are cones but play very well, Luka, Steph Curry, Trae Young. But even those guys can't guard the point guards. They have to guard the other guys. So now he's going to have to guard a 2. So he's already small for the point guard, so now he'll be small for the other guard that he has to play against. So it's going to be very interesting to kind of see how this dynamic works out. There's not, like I told you, Shaun, there's nothing more that I'd rather do than come on here and say I was right. I was wrong. Nothing more. I hate coming on here and saying I was right about the Kings messing it up because I want us to be good. I want us to go back to light and the beam. And I get it. Sacramento's excited. We drafted Devin Carter, a waste of a draft pick now. We signed Killian Hayes, a waste of a signing. We signed Dennis Schroeder and traded him. So he's coming into a room where it's already loaded at point guard. And I get it was a different regime for Devin Carter, but what's the point of Devin Carter playing huge minutes for us to draft his replacement? What was the point of us signing Killian Hayes after a great 10-day to a 2-year deal to where now he's never going to play? It's just, you guys are just looking at today, and that's fine. It's the draft. It's exciting, but there's other things that go into the NBA season than just the draft. We have to look at what happened last season, and we have to look at the roster that we have. If we can figure out to get some defenders around him, I mean, I forgot about DeAndre Hunter. DeAndre Hunter is a great defender, but if we're going to need him and Keegan Murray to become OG and Mikal level defenders, and I don't know if that's the way it's going to play out. And even with that, they have a Mitchell Robinson and a Karl Anthony Towns that can protect the rim. Sabonis is not a rim defender, and I just don't know how it's going to play out. So if we can find a way to make it work, maybe the guy Caravan, maybe Caravan can come in and be elite wing defender. We have to get defenders around Acuff, or Acuff is going to struggle, in my opinion.
Well, on the offensive side, he's, as you mentioned, clearly the best point guard in this draft, as he contributed on 38.7 points per game in the NCAA this past season. He either scored or assisted on nearly 39 points per game, which was the most in D1. So the Kings got their new playmaker. And as Toddy said, his job ain't going to be to defend. And then Toddy also mentions, of course, Kevin wanted Darren Peterson.
Does he play goalie? Is he a center? What do you mean his job not to
Well,
defend?
Kevin, would you have been saying this if the Kings drafted Darren Peterson and like Darren Peterson is an elite scorer, but like, is he really the strongest defender?
He's not.
I know he may not be as much of a liability as Acuff, but come on.
Shaun, if you Google who was the worst Division I basketball point guard in Power 5, it's going to say Darius Acuff.
Defensively, yes.
Defense. So anybody would have been a better choice because they're a better defender. And I get it. If he's going to come out here and score 35 a night and he's going to be a top 50 player for the rest of his career, by all means, I'm in. But if we're not going to support him, he's going to struggle.
Well, it's funny to me that you mentioned the recency bias of Jalen Brunson leading the Knicks to a championship, because Las Vegas Aces head coach Becky Hammon has just been getting absolutely fried this past week since the Knicks won the championship. And it's because during her offseason, when the WNBA isn't playing, she'll go on ESPN. She serves as an NBA analyst, very knowledgeable. And she basically said, like a year and a half ago, I don't think Jalen Brunson is a 1A guy. I don't think he's a guy who's going to end up leading your team to a championship. You need someone else alongside him to lead them to a championship. She was obviously wrong as it pertains to Jalen Brunson. But she recently, she didn't say anything about it over the first 4 or 5 days after the Knicks won the championship. And everyone, you have Josh Hart, who is like, there was one comment that I remembered and I'm waiting for an apology from somebody. And Jalen Brunson is like, yeah, I use it as motivation, but I'm not going to talk about it. And so the thing that I thought was interesting is in her first comments, Becky Hammon was basically saying, you know what? I stand by my take. My job is to have an opinion. That's what ESPN pays me to do. And I stand by my take. And she mentioned exactly what you did, Kevin, where if you look at recent history in terms of the last 40 plus years of NBA champions, You have Stephen Curry and Isaiah Thomas as the outliers. Now you have Jalen Brunson, the third outlier in a 40-year span. How many great small point guards did not lead their team to a championship? Allen Iverson, among many. So it's like she stood 10 toes down, and I respect that. But then if you look at her pregame press conference ahead of the Aces playing the Liberty today, she was pissed still because she still was hearing about it after she doubled down. And she just opened her press conference by saying, wait, I have a comment to start. I was wrong. My opinion was wrong. Okay, let's go. Like, that's a direct quote from Becky Hammond, which I just thought was absolutely entertaining. But when it comes to Darius Acuff, we were talking about this in the pre-show meeting. It's rare when you have an entire fan base all rooting for one guy to be drafted to a team, because you even think back to 2018 with Luka going to Dallas ultimately with the trade in Atlanta. Is it's like, okay, there was a lot of Kings fans who wanted Luka, but then there was plenty of Kings fans who wanted Marvin Bagley. And I wanted Luka, but I was happy when they took Bagley, because I was like, you know what? Pick and roll partner with Fox. It makes more sense. We're looking to build a team and not just drafting the best available players. And so then I think back to 2020, and I was a big Tyrese Maxey guy in 2020. That's who I wanted the Kings to draft 12th overall. But then you have Tyrese Halliburton dropping out of not only the top 5, but out of the top 10. He falls in the Kings' lap at number 12, and it's like, how are we going to pass on this guy? The answer is you don't. And it all works out. And as you've talked about ad nauseum, Kevin, Devin Carter just hasn't been a great NBA player thus far. We can agree that Ayo Dosunmu is better than Rob Dillingham, but Rob Dillingham is better than Devin Carter. And the latter was the crux of the argument that we always talked about. So I can fall on the sword with Devin Carter. Nevertheless, the NBA draft is a true crapshoot. And so I'm really interested. I love the Acuff pick. I'm so happy about it, because there are guys in the NBA whose job is to solely defend. You may not go out there and get even 10 points from them, but if you have a guy like Darius Acuff starting, then you bring in a guy who's just going to play straight defense, and that's all they do. The Kings could bring back Davion Mitchell and just say, go out there and play defense. You were brought here to play defense. That's what we need from you. And so if the Kings end up bringing in a defensive-minded guard who can play alongside a Darius Acuff, and Darius Acuff is going for 25 and 10 a game, like we saw Tyreek Evans in his rookie season, then I'd be thrilled. As Toddy says, go get Lou Dort.
But the thing about that, Sean, is we're bringing in someone to play alongside him. So that means he now has to guard somebody else.
Yeah. But
so he has to guard a two-guard now. So he has to find someone. So at some point, you have to find somebody to guard.
Yeah, but
bringing in guys to go ahead.
I was just going to say the overall point is, though, like, you just look at our most recent NBA champions. Their starting backcourt was Jalen Brunson and Josh Hart. In that situation, you have a Lou Dort or another defensive-minded player guarding Jalen Brunson, and then you have Darius Acuff on Josh Hart, and Josh Hart is going to score 6 points a game. We don't really have to worry about him in the corner.
I don't know how many championship teams started Julian Champagnie. So it was easy to hide a Jalen Brunson.
Okay. Yeah, that and that was something that was really interesting about that series too, is that they were really attacking Brunson. And that was
every
clear.
time we saw with James Harden, like if you have a cone out there, they're gonna attack you every single time until you get a stop. And even when you get a stop, they're gonna come right back at you. So unless he becomes if the scales of a 10's an elite defender and a 1's a bad defender, if he can be a 6, if he can just be a playable defender out there, it's gonna work out. But if he cannot guard a door, they're gonna make him work on defense. So that's taking a lot of energy for him to come back down and have to put up 25 a night. And what does that do to a young man's confidence?
It's true.
Going out there and getting cooked all night.
So we pivot from Darius Acuff. We'll just have to wait and see, and he'll be playing at the Golden One Center in the California Classic Summer League in about 11 days. So we're going to get to see Darius Acuff put on that Kings jersey very soon. And I will forewarn everyone, Just if Acuff goes off in summer league, it doesn't mean he's going to be the savior, because Marvin Bagley went off in summer league,
I
and
knew
we
this
all
was
saw
coming.
how that turned out. We all saw how that turned out. I will never forget being there for Bagley's first game wearing a Kings uniform. I was a part of the crew that went to the airport to say hello to Marvin when he landed in Sacramento, coming off a PJ, and then he ended up playing the next day in summer league, and he had this crazy dunk against the Lakers that like shook the building, and it was such a great highlight play. But ultimately, we saw what Marvin Bagley turned into as a Sacramento King and as an NBA pro. I mean, he's still in the league, but he's a fringe NBA player at this point. And meanwhile, Luka Doncic is a future Hall of Famer. Nevertheless, before we moved on completely from the draft, there's a couple other things I wanted to highlight. Number one, we talked about Alex Caravan in passing, a 6'8" guy who comes from UConn. He's an all-time winner. We look at the model that the New York Knicks built the core of their team off of. It's a bunch of winners. And so, yes, Kevin, he may lack athleticism and moving laterally, and he's got all the stereotypes of a white man athletically, but he's 6'8" and he's a winner, and he's a great role player that will do everything that you need a guy out there to do, because not everyone can be the star that Darius Acuff is going to be. You need a guy who's going to go out there and do the dirty work. A Josh Hart type player. We were just talking about how, okay, you may not have to always worry about Josh Hart offensively. They will have to look out for Alex Caravan offensively because he's a sniper from 3-point range, but his offensive game is pretty limited after that. But he's a guy who's going to make that pass. He's going to go for that rebound. He's going to try, at least try, to guard the other team's best wings. And so he's ultimately a winner, and he's a guy that I'm happy that the Kings move back into the first round for, because the Kings picked 34th tomorrow. Instead, they give up a future second round pick to move up 5 slots. Caravan was ranked 31st overall by the draft experts. So if he goes chalky, yeah, the Kings reached by 2 picks, but it's because they didn't feel confident that they were going to be able to get him 3 picks later than he should have gone. And so,
but in my opinion, it's again with the guards, we have a load of room in the forwards. So is he even going to have an impact? We traded back for Nick Clifford, and he barely even played. The rookie that we got in the second round, Maxime, was better than him. So it's like
Maxime is the stud. You were talking earlier about rim protectors. That's our guy right there, is Maxime Reynaud.
Yeah. I don't know if he's a rim protector. He's a very good stretch the floor defender.
Clip it. Maxime Reynaud is he is our rim defender. Clip it right now. 57 minutes, 21 seconds. Maxime Reynaud is the Kings rim protector of the future. A guy like Wemby
if you had to guess how many blocks he averaged, what would you say?
I'd say like 2 to 3 a game.
No.
From his rookie season?
No.
What,
0.4.
1.4?
0.4. But yeah, hey, clip it. Rim defender. Oh,
hey,
yeah. Ooh,
hey. Small sample size.
That's you know what? I think everyone's going to go up when he's in there. When you think someone who's going to block shots, you're thinking of a Jared Allen. Oh, Kev didn't watch the games. I just pulled up the stats from 82 games. So what about?
Yeah, for the audio only listeners, Toddy said Maxime is the truth. Kevin didn't watch the games. I mean, Maxime did finish second team all rookie.
He's great offensively, and that's why he made the all rookie team. He didn't make it because he's a defender. Let's call it
42nd overall pick. I mean, we're not putting a lot of stock into the second round tomorrow, but 42nd overall pick who finished in the top 10 among rookies. That's a pretty damn good pick for Scott Perry.
Great pick. He's not a rim defender. You say he was a rim defender. I never said he was bad. Yeah, I say he's not a rim defender.
I mean, he's 7'1". He better be a rim defender.
Brother, Chet Holmgren don't block shots. He was playing against Wemby, couldn't do nothing.
Well,
a lot of tall guys that don't do nothing.
Wemby is the anomaly. Wemby's
a lot of tall guys that don't do nothing. He's a great defender. Okay. I get it. He's a great offensive player. More power to him. He's not a rim protector. Let 2 things can be true. He can be very good on offense. He can be the truth. He can be all that. But he can also be a bad defender. Okay, so it's going to be interesting to see how it plays out. Like I said, until we can find that guy, things will be different. But you also need to take with a grain of salt. If Domas plays, how many minutes does he really chop out? There was a lot of opportunity because Sabonis was out. He's going to be healthy. What is he going to look like in a limited role? You know what I mean? So there's a lot of you got, like I told you, we were talking about earlier, you got to look at everything. You can't just look at one part and not look at the whole picture. Sabonis is going to be back. And if we can't trade him, he's going to be on our team for the future. So there's going to be a lot of things that come into play here. But overall, I'm happy we got Darius Acuff. I just want him to be, like I said, 6 out of 10. That's what we need. For him to be this franchise guy that everyone's screaming, he has to be a 6 out of 10 because Jalen Brunson will give effort. Steph Curry will give effort. It's going to be hard when they're going to hunt him off screens. And if he can't guard, and for him to be number 1 first team All-Census, SEC Player of the Year, All-American, all these accolades, but be the worst defender in college basketball, how much can you really put into that? Is he not putting in the effort on defense? I mean, Arkansas wasn't a great team this year. They went toe-to-toe with High Point. That High Point guard should get drafted tomorrow because of Darius Acuff. That's all I'm saying. You got to look at the whole picture. You can't just – a lot of people are in my DM saying, Kevin, how many players – who else got drafted off his team? Who did this? All-American. I was like, that's all fine and dandy, but if you can't guard a door, we can't play you in crunch time. So what's good? What's good if I have a 25-point guy on the bench because he can't play defense?
Yeah, that's fair. And so it's one of those things where, once again, we're going to have to wait and see as we continue things here on episode 193 of Stats Over Politics. Shaun Holko alongside Kevin Dent. All right, Kevin, before we get on out of here, we got some other NBA news that's worth discussing because there's been a lot of other NBA news aside from Giannis getting traded and the results of the NBA draft first round. And so the first one that I wanted to get to comes in the coaching ranks. And no, it is not Tiago Splitter becoming the head coach of the Chicago Bulls. It is not his replacement, Mike Nori, becoming the head coach of the Portland Trailblazers, who are local to Kevin. This one was a bit of a head scratcher to me when it came to Mike Nori becoming the head coach of the Blazers, because he's a guy who's been an assistant for a really long time. He was an assistant for the Kings for years. He was the head assistant for the Minnesota Timberwolves over the last 5 years, and he finally gets his opportunity. And then when he finally gets his opportunity, he gets a 1-year deal with team options for the second and third year. I mean, I just don't know how much cheaper you could really get in that regard. And so I'm not a fan of the new Blazers owner, but I don't think many people are. What I wanted to get into, though, was Dusty May becoming head coach of the Dallas Mavericks. We alluded to it earlier when we were talking about who the Mavericks took 9th overall. But Dusty May has agreed to become the new head coach of the Dallas Mavericks. And it's really interesting because apparently he wasn't their first pick as they tried to pry John Shire from Duke. And we look back to the 6-7 times that Coach K, teams in the NBA, try to get Coach K to make the leap. And John Shire must have been taking Coach K's advice, as he did not want to become the Dallas Mavericks head coach. And so now we see Dusty May, a guy who was at Michigan for 2 years, and he wins a national championship in his second year, and then he is instantly making the jump to the NBA. He's a guy who came from Florida International. He leads them to the Final Four, gets the job at Michigan, and within 2 years, he wins a national championship, and now he's headed to the NBA. And I was talking to my guy Keith Joganatis earlier, and he was saying, "Oh man, that guy's dead to me. Oh, he abandoned us. He left us." I'm like, Keith, he went to your university and he won a national championship within 2 years. And now he's moving on to bigger and better things. What else can he accomplish? He did it. Yeah, he could try to win multiple, or you leave when you're on top and you just won a national championship in your second year as a Power 5 head coach. I think that's pretty damn good. So now he moves on to the Dallas Mavericks. But as BetMGM pointed out, history is not on Dusty May's side when you look at coaches to go from the college ranks to the NBA and what their overall records were. In fact, 2 of 11 head coaches to go from college to the NBA have winning records. This would have been our Sean's Pop quiz question of the week, but since Toddy's not here handling Podfather duties, we're just going to read this stat and we're going to move on so this stat doesn't get too stale by the time we get to it. But 2 of 11 head coaches in the last 30 years have gone on to have winning records. Kevin, this isn't for Sean's Pop quiz, but any guesses who those 2 of 11 coaches were that went on to have success at the NBA level coming from directly from college?
Brad Stevens.
Ding. Yep.
John Calipari was trash.
Yep. John Calipari had a 72 and 112 record with the New Jersey Nets.
It's an older coach, I don't know.
Not that old. He actually just recently moved on from the team he was most recently with.
Oh, Billy Donovan. No.
Ding, ding, ding. Yeah. That's correct. 469 and 413 between his tenure in Oklahoma City and Chicago. So Brad Stevens and Billy Donovan. Yeah. So Brad Stevens and Billy Donovan are the only coaches in the last 30 years out of 13, the only coaches in the last 30 years to go from college to the NBA and actually have success. Other names on that list include John Beilein, another former Michigan coach who went to Cleveland. He went 14 and 40, didn't even finish a season. Fred Hoiberg, he was 40 games under 500 with the Bulls. Reggie Theus, we look at way back when with the Sacramento Kings 15 plus years ago. He went 44 and 62. Then Rick Pitino, he went 192 and 220 with the Knicks and Celtics. And then you mentioned John Calipari. So history is not on Dusty May's side, and this is coming from an Ohio State fan, but it's like, if you're like my guy, Keith, I kind of end up convincing him by the end of the phone call, like, come on, like what else could Dusty May have done for you? But if you're like my guy, Keith, then I hope you can learn to appreciate Dusty May and what he accomplished during his brief tenure with the Michigan Wolverines, because he won a championship. Kevin, I see you now on the screen. We were dealing with a bit of a technical. No worries at all. We were dealing with a little bit of technical difficulties for the audio only listeners, but we're back in action. And so, Michigan fans, you should be thanking Dusty May and appreciating him for the rest of his career, whether if he is a success or a flop in the NBA, because ultimately he brought your school a national championship, something that hadn't been accomplished in like 40 years. And I said, the last thing I said to Keith on the phone is I said, well, I don't know if I'm ever going to see an Ohio State men's basketball national championship. So appreciate the one you got, appreciate the guy who brought it to you, and keep it moving, because he did about all he could at Michigan. And so credit to him. I'm always a guy who's tried to continue progressing in my career and continue moving up. And so I'm not going to be mad at Dusty May for continuing to move up. And now he has an opportunity as an NBA head coach. And Dallas clearly wanted to go the college route as they inquired with John Shire first. But now it'll be interesting again, as we always say, to see how things turn out in the long run when it comes to Dusty May as a head coach in the NBA. Kevin, what's some other NBA news that's worth discussing to you?
I want to talk about Julius Randle because I feel like it leads into a bigger situation. Julius Randle being dumped in a salary dump. We've seen it with Andrew Wiggins. We've seen it with Karl-Anthony Towns. We've seen it with Kevin Garnett. What do they all have in common, Sean? And Jimmy Butler. They leave the Timberwolves and not only go to the finals, Jimmy didn't win, but the rest of those guys won a championship. So is Anthony Edwards then going to join that crew? I get it. Ayo is a great guy. He really got signed because DiVincenzo went down. So it's going to be very interesting to see how that plays out. At some point, he's got to tell them, we need to compete. We went to the WCF 2 years in a row and did nothing. We traded Karl-Anthony Towns for him to be the second best player on a championship team. And you guys didn't think he was that.
Yeah, and as Kevin was alluding to there, Minnesota sent Julius Randle and the number 28 pick in the NBA draft to the Brooklyn Nets in a 3-team trade that sends Nick Claxton to the Chicago Bulls. The Timberwolves also acquired Brooklyn's number 33 pick for Randle and number 28. And so, as Kevin was saying, basically just a straight up salary dump. And I was texting with another friend, my friend named Aiden today, and he was saying, what if the Kings could, he was like, I don't want the Kings to dump Sabonis for like a late teens, early 21st round pick. And I was like, what? You think that the Kings are capable of getting a late teens, early 20s first round pick in tonight's draft for Domantas Sabonis. Did you just see what Julius Randle just went for? They had to trade back in the draft to get rid of Julius Randle and to get rid of his contract. And so, man, that's the biggest thing. My biggest takeaway from the Julius Randle trade is that like the Timberwolves had to give something up to get rid of him. And so I'm wearing this Domantas Sabonis jersey with pride. And it's like, oh my God, he helped us break the drought. That's amazing. But now, in the grand scheme of things, Tyrese Halliburton is a franchise centerpiece, and Domantas Sabonis is kind of just another contract on the books for the Sacramento Kings. As we look at Julius Randle as a Timberwolf, he averaged 20 points per game, 6.9 rebounds, 4.9 assists. Now he's headed back to New York, aka to Brooklyn. Ayo Dosunmu as a Timberwolf, he had 14 points per game during the regular season on splits of 52, 41, 93. Then all of those numbers got better, except his overall field goal percentage went down 2 percentage points, but he was obviously shooting it a lot more, as in the playoffs, he scored 16 points per game on 50, 43, 93 splits, which 50, 40, 90, that's still damn good right there. And Ayo Dosunmu, as Kevin alluded to, he's going to sign that 5-year, $112 million contract to return to the Timberwolves with a player option on the 5th season. So good for Ayo Dosunmu, because when he was coming out of Illinois, like he had a great run with the Fighting Illini, and I was like, I just want this guy to be an NBA player. And he ended up getting drafted, I think, late first round, if my memory serves correctly. And now he's able to flourish. It's just, is Ayo Dosunmu the piece that's going to get Anthony Edwards and Rudy Gobert to that next level? I like Ayo Dosunmu, and I sure like him when he is making the Rob Dillingham trade look pretty interesting, just in terms of trolling Kevin. But I just don't know if he's that guy that's going to end up taking them to that next level. And so we shall have to wait and see. Another player who is signing an extension is none other than Trae Young, because Trae Young, he decided to opt out of his player option with the Washington Wizards after they traded for him this past season, and he didn't even play. And so now Trae Young does plan to sign a 4-year, $212 million contract to return to the Washington Wizards 6+ months after wanting to join the rebuilding franchise that's now trying to compete in the East. And I just got to do a quick shiver for our guy, Javon Toddy, when it comes to his guy, Trae Young. And so with Trae Young, you look at his career thus far, he's averaged 25.1 points per game, 9.8 assists per game, which would rank 3rd all time. And he's a 4-time All-Star. And so basically 25 and 10 from Trae Young. Those are some pretty good numbers. And as we were talking about earlier, when it came to the Giannis situation, the Wizards, they look like a top 6 team right now, because Trae Young and Anthony Davis with Alex Sarr, that would be a play-in team, let alone knocking on that door of top 5, top 6. Then you throw in the number 1 overall pick in AJ DeBonsa, that seems to lock them in as a playoff team, as Toddy was saying. And so I thought that was really interesting. Whether if you want to add on to Trae Young talk or highlight something else, Kevin, any other news that you think's worth discussing?
No, I really just want to talk about that Julius Randle thing, because I know Wes is going to be watching, so I want him to be like, oh, Kevin Anthony Edwards isn't going anywhere. And then I'll be like, yep, well, we thought that with everybody. So that's the only thing I wanted to throw in there.
Yeah, and one other thing that I will mention, because we know that you're a LeBronologist. LeBron has outlasted the careers, and I'm just seeing this from DraftKings Sports. And I also know, Kevin, I don't know if you've seen any of their ads or heard any of their sponsorships, but DraftKings just overnight went from being DraftKings Sportsbook to now they rebranded to just DraftKings Sports. Like they're trying not to be known as like a total betting partner. But DraftKings, their social media presented, LeBron has outlasted the careers of 7 number 1 picks selected after him. Dwight Howard, Bogut, and Andrea Bargnani, Greg Oden, Derrick Rose, Blake Griffin, John Wall. Now we're looking at 2011 as the next guy who he would have to outlast. And I believe 2011 was Anthony Davis. So I don't know if he's going to end up.
They might go out at the same time.
2011? Yeah, probably. Was 2011 Anthony Davis? Yeah, it was. Because that was after he won the national championship, I think. Yeah, and then 2013 was Andrew Wiggins.
No, 2011 was Kyrie.
Oh, Kyrie, yes, thank you. And then 2012 was Anthony Davis. And then 2013 was, I was thinking to myself, I was like, what was 2012? Yeah, so there you go. So that does it. Any other final thoughts, Kevin, before we get up out of here?
No, sir. We will see you guys on Monday. See what other crazy stuff gets to drop.
Yeah, we don't cover baseball or the WNBA much on this podcast, and so we're gonna need some news to start hitting the fan for the NBA, and we're gonna need to stretch out that content to get us through to August for football season getting started. I was just talking with my uncle Jeremy, who listens to our podcast. Shout out to him. We appreciate you. And I was telling him how you and I were recording the podcast tonight, and he was like, "Is Kaz going to join you?" And I was like, "Kaz is pretty much just an NFL guy, so we'll see Kaz from August to February. Until then, Kevin, Javon, and I, we're going to be stretching out this basketball content as much as we possibly can to get us to training camp and the preseason." One other thing I think is worth noting, just because we've covered it on the last 2 episodes of the podcast, is that the NFL has elected not to hold a supplementary draft for Brendan Sorsby, who was the only guy who wanted to enter the NFL supplemental draft. So now he's going to have to wait until the 2027 NFL draft to try and get his name in there. And so that's something that's interesting. I know Toddy will have a lot to say about it in the future, but that is going to do it for this week's episode of Stats Over Politics. But before we do, Kevin, is it safe to say that we're officially going to eliminate one of your favorite memes off of the panel?
Oh no, that's gonna come. That's gonna come all season long, brother. All season long.
Okay. For the audio only listeners,
you think I hate watched the Aaron? Oh boy. I can't wait for him to pull out that book, and I can go tell all the Patriot fans. Now what? I can't. I told my wife, I said there will be no Arthur Juwan Brown chance support. I told her if she gets on any fantasy team, bro, we're gonna fight.
Oh my God.
I hate watching to a supreme.
I have literally never heard him referred to as Arthur Juwan. You always find these guys government names, because I remember you're the first person I ever heard call CJ Stroud Coleridge Bernard. And so for the audio only listeners, it's the classic meme that Kevin would always pull on Javon and I, of AJ Brown holding some Angel Soft tissues, and now AJ Brown no longer a member of Kevin's Philadelphia Eagles. He's a New England Patriot. And so it shall stay on the panel of our memes. And so that is ultimately going to do it for episode 193 of Stats Over Politics. Make sure to give us a like on YouTube. It helps us a lot. And if you enjoy the podcast, hit subscribe to get notifications when we go live. You can follow us on Instagram and TikTok at Stats Over Politics, and on X at Stats or Politics. Make sure to subscribe, rate, and review on all podcast platforms. And if you're enjoying the show, please give us those 5 stars. We'd really appreciate it, as you guys have been tuned in to episode 193 of Stats Over Politics. For the squad, Javon Toddy, Kevin Dent, Keith Juggernaut, Alex Dent, Kaz Johnson, and Gary Singh, I've been your host, Shaun Holko. Thank you for tuning in, and we will see you next week on another episode of Stats Over Politics. Peace.